I hate the sticker. Two, hello, check. Two. Check two. What's up, folks? How's it going? Excuse me, how rude of me. How rude of me. Chin chin. Okay. Now we're in business. Now we're in business, folks. How's your night? My night was pretty good. There's some school drama with my kid. I had to deal with that. Don't need to get into the details of that. To deal with some stuff. But it was a nice night. Another Froyo. No, there was just an incident that I had to hear about, and then I had to talk to him about. We don't need to get into the details of it. Excuse me. We don't need to get into the details. But he's at school today. Like, they have like days off. They're called PED days here, and I did sign him up for this one, and he was just going to like a fun little like cafe thing today. So I just with like a big like play area and everything. So he's having a good day. We're gonna hang out later, eat some Pizza Hut. It's gonna be good times. I would love a PED day. It would be great. Yeah. If you just like, you could just sign up for like a fun activity. It's not it's called something cafe, but it's like a kid's place with like a big play area or whatever. I don't know. He's not at like a cool like coffee shop, like slamming back espresso or something. There is nothing like Pizza Hut on a Friday night. Honestly, if I didn't have like my son, I would not eat Pizza Hut as much as I do, because I eat Pizza Hut every single Friday night of my life. And I think that's probably a bit too much. I like Pizza Hut pizza. I think they make very good pizza. I would probably be, if I'm going to order food, I'd probably be ordering something different than that. Or sometimes maybe doing a little bit something different with the pizza situation. Is it like one of those old restaurant style Pizza Huts? No, I don't even think those exist anymore up the Reds. I don't even know if you can go and Like sit down at, is there a Pizza Hut where you can go and sit down? There's certainly not a buffet. Certainly not. There is still some. Okay. I think I was mentioning a couple weeks ago I was in Brockville, and I went to the Pizza Hut in Brockville, and it's just this like, you know, this random like boring sort of corporate style like box store version. And you can literally, like, while getting your Pizza Hut at the shit, this is like a we must return thing. The intention is to demoralize you. But you can go to the shitty box store corporate Pizza Hut, and you leave with your pizza, and you can see the old Pizza Hut. You can see the building that it used to be, where they had the buffet and they had the whole vibe. You know, you can see it, and it's some other restaurant now, but you can see the shape of the roof. It's kind of like, it's like Kevin Garnett in that Adam Sandler movie. Why the fuck would you show it to me if I can't have it? You know? I remember the one I went to at a salad bar, some of the best video games in the world. I don't remember the video games being there, but yeah, the salad bar and the lunch buffet. It was fantastic. And just everything about the vibe is that pure like nostalgia. The pictures of like Pepsi with the ice clinking in it, you know? Pouring into those big cups. They bring out the sizzling pan, you know? I genuinely do miss it. I genuinely do miss that experience. Coming out as pro-Gorb. Well, listen, what should have happened is that the Soviet Union could have opened up their economy a little bit to get the hut, which Russian citizens deserve to have as well. But they should have kept the socialism, though, you know, like China has done. Pizza Hut, yes, but don't give up on your entire political project to get it. This is what I mean. You want to incorporate the Pizza Huts to help build socialism. You don't want to give up the socialism to get the Pizza Huts. That was Gorbachev's mistake. There's a lineup of Xenophobia, Terminator 2, Street Fighter 2, Mortal Kombat, Pole Position, and Pac-Man. Very nice. Those, it'd be fun to have one of those Terminator 2 arcade cabinets. That would be fun. What's more socialist than a pizza to share? It's a great question. I once heard they were the primary purchaser of kale in the States. They used it under their salad bar. Yeah, just for like the decoration. Yeah, I remember hearing that. I'm in Baltimore, but one of my favorite places to eat in the world is Rockville, Maryland. No, that's not where I'm from. I'm from Brockville, Ontario. You seem smart. What are your top 3 book recommendations? Well, geez, that's a big question. My favorite book of all time is For Whom the Bell Tolls by Ernest Hemingway. I don't know if this is like a boring English lit bro choice, but For Whom the Bell Tolls by Ernest Hemingway. I got them all on hand, right? There's this one's under some stuff. Don't fall. You got The Devil's Chessboard, Alan Dulles, The CIA, and the Rise of America's Secret Government. This is I've halfway through it. Not my favorite book, but definitely a book that people should read. And of course, couldn't leave out any book recommendations without this vital book by Dominique Lacerdo, Stalin, The History and Critique of a Black Legend. These are all books about fighting fascism, so that's the through line with all that stuff. Viewers did not drop. That was nice, that one day that I got put in the Twitch front page and had viewers. Dongleho's reading it right now. Very nice. That was a fun, very short-lived experience. Getting put on the front page of Twitch and actually having viewers come in here. That was interesting. But thankfully that won't be happening again. What's the viewers? I don't know. I just have you lot. I just have you lot. That's true. You're chatters. That's correct. Smashing. No, that is true. But otherwise, yeah, last night was good. I watched Hoops again. Watched the Knicks and Sixers game. I was kind of hoping for a Knicks win. For some reason, I have just kind of like a vindictive feeling towards the Sixers fans. So just kind of cheering for the fan base to be the most upset. And Sixers fans would certainly be very upset. Embiid had a great game, though. And apparently is dealing with Bell's palsy, too, which is unfortunate. Remember when you talked about that Stalin book at the same time and people were like, what? Yeah, I remember. Yes. I remember. It's funny the people that talked themselves into taking the Lakers over the Nuggets. That really took some courage to do. Some people really like Nick Wright, who's a sports analyst who I think is pretty good. He's kind of goofy, but I like his takes a lot of the time. But he talked himself into he picked the Nuggets and then talked himself into changing his pick to the Lakers in 6. And it's actually amazing that they're on the verge of now getting swept again. And even last night, like in the second half, it just didn't even seem like they wanted to be there. They're like the players were just like, we can't beat this, guys. Like, let's just fucking. They're mentally planning their golf retreats and their vacation time now. And the Nuggets are weird too, because like even when they're down like 8-10 points, it feels like they're up. Like it's kind of like unique. Like you don't get the sense that they're ever like that pressed about it. Even when they were down like 20 the other day, they didn't really. It was not like, oh shit, we're down 20. We got to respond. We got to have a sense of urgency. They totally just like, it's like almost lackadaisical. It's like, yeah, we'll just come back from 20 now. And yeah, last night they spent a good part of the first half of the game kind of down 8-10 points, and it's just like you watch it and it just feels like this inevitability. I don't know who's going to beat them. They very well may repeat. I don't know who's going to beat them in a 7-game series. Maybe I should put a little money on that. What would be the harm? What would be the harm if I placed a little bet on the Nuggets repeating? My Magic finally didn't shit the bed. Yeah, it was they dominated actually. They had a dominant win against the Cavs. And I'm glad. It's like the Magic are a fun team because it's like I feel like they're a team that they don't have like a superstar. They don't have a lot of star power, but you watch them and they've got a bunch of players that are really good and who have bought into the system, and you can tell they just like playing with one another. I think that's one thing about basketball especially that we kind of take for granted sometimes. It's like, let's just get a super team. Let's get 3 superstars, and then that's we don't have to do anything else. We'll just figure everything else out. But it's like you really can't just like, no matter how good these players are, you can't just throw them into this circumstance and be like, okay, now go and win a championship. It's like, it doesn't really work like that. Like, they have to like playing with one another. There has to be other players that can step up and make plays. And that's the thing. You get the sense with the Magic that you watch them. It's like they're just a bunch of like talented guys. They've bought into it. They like playing with one another. They play together. You know, it's like, and it's cool. It's cool to see. The Mavs have that a little, but they do have two massive stars, though. But they're still pretty well constructed. That's what I was thinking, like, you know, with the Magic this year, you know, watching them and then watching the Raptors. And the Raptors, I think on paper, especially at the beginning of the year, were probably had better talent, like, on the team, or it's at least comparable. And it's just a night and day difference. You just see them and they look like all discombobulated. They don't really trust each other. They're not really playing together. You know, there's kind of an inconsistency in the strategy and stuff. And then you see the Magic, and they're you can just tell they all like to be there. You know, it makes a big difference. So the Magic are fun. I don't think that they're going to win this first round series, because I think Donovan Mitchell is probably the best player, like, in that series. But all don't lie. It's true. The old adage. The old adage. But still, the Magic are fun, though. I think it's really impressive that they made the playoffs. Happy the young guys get some playoff experience. Well, that's another thing as well. It's like, you don't... Oh, gosh. You can't really teach that, especially to young players. The different environment and the way the game tightens up and the defense tightens up, and you're playing the same team 4 games in a row or 7 games in a row sometimes, and they're having specific game plans to beat you, like, all those 7 times, and they're just making adjustments, and everyone's watching and the media's plugged into it, and, like, it's a whole different situation. And it's like, players need to play through that and experience that. They can't just walk right in and just be incredible. I mean, you're seeing with, like, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander that some young players can in fact do that, but it's rare. It's rare to have that level of, like, competency when you get to that totally different environment. This is quite a bad movie poster. Not so good. Not so good, Al. You want to maybe take a look at this one again. In the approval process, you want to take a look at that one again, I would say. Take another look at that before sending that one out there. How do these things get someone to say yes to them? It's a great question. It is a great question. I'm not so sure. Anyway, in about 40 minutes, I'm talking to another streamer, HAYAT. You might be familiar with HAYAT's streams or tweets. She has been getting a lot of attention with some of her tweets over the last 6 months from some not very cool people. Definitely someone who I recommend following, though, and very cool person. We met IRL actually a couple weeks ago. Very cool person. She's going to come on. We got a whole bunch of stuff to talk about. More protests breaking out. ASU is trying to drench the kids off the quad. Yeah, it's like, I don't know. It's just, you saw last night. It's like they're really, even some of these encampments or protests that are just starting, and they're just immediately sending in the riot cops right away. So it just seems like it's going to continue escalating. I still can't believe that Colombia, which teaches about how they did the 68 protests badly, is repeating history. Well, it's honestly amazing, Doc Not So Strange, that they're releasing statements about how they need to call the cops on their protesting students that acknowledge in the statement that, like, Colombia has this inspiring history of protest, and the fact that, like, they've gotten this wrong in the past, in both the late 60s when it comes to Vietnam, or during the 80s when it came to anti-apartheid protesters. And the school celebrates this legacy, acknowledges that they were in the wrong for dealing with similar protests in the past like this, and then at the exact same breath, they're like, by the way, we need to send in the cops to destroy these encampments and destroy these protests. We were wrong before, but this time we're right, though. This time we're getting it right. Like, that's actually pretty amazing. We joke about 2020 and the protests seeming like 1,000 years ago, but sheesh. I mean, let's look at this. I wanted, because this is something that I meant to talk about the other day when I had a tweet about this. Let me find it, because this was like bizarre, this response. I honestly couldn't understand even the point that this person was trying to make. This, like, one of these weird, like, radical centrists. Yeah, this was such a weird response from coddled affluent professional. So yeah, I did this tweet, the cops versus, when there's kids being murdered in the school versus, like, college students when college students are protesting a genocide, this tweet. And then I got this response by this, like, one of these, like, radical centrists. One of the most cursed accounts on Twitter. And they say, "Great horseshoe. Is this the argument you're making? Certain things permitted, others aren't." And there's this image of the fiery George Floyd protests, and then this propaganda about Jews controlling the third world liberation movement, I guess. And I was honestly like, I genuinely, like, don't understand what the point is that you're trying to make. Like, I actually don't. I'm not even being, like, intentionally ignorant or anything like that. I think it is Nasser, yeah. I'm not being intentionally ignorant. I actually have no fucking idea what the purpose of this reply is, what the point is. And then they said certain things are permitted, others aren't. Parentheses, who makes the decisions? So I guess the point, I feel like the point that they were trying to make is that, like, trying to accuse me of, like, being anti-Semitic because I'm suggesting that certain protests, like the George Floyd protests, are allowed, while other protests, like the anti-Israel protests, are not allowed. I think that's the point. Which is, if that is the point that this person is trying to make, that is like an insane argument to make anyways. This whole idea that like, oh, why were those protests allowed to happen? They were not allowed to happen. Those George Floyd protests were broken up, were met every single night by violent riot cops beating the shit out of people and escalating each one of those peaceful protests into these like riots. Like the police were creating the violence in each of those situations. So this whole idea that like, and this is like a right-wing thing, so it makes sense that this like radical centrist is saying this. This whole idea that like, oh, those protests were just allowed. They were just allowed to burn down cities. Like, no, they were not. People got arrested en masse. People are still in jail today for actions that took place during those protests. The police violently assaulted hundreds of people over the course of several months. The idea that like they were allowed to happen for whatever, and there's some kind of nefarious forces allowing certain protests and not allowing certain protests, is just not accurate. Like, that's not accurate. They were not allowed. There were riot cops beating the fuck out of people every single night at those protests. Is that the point they're trying to make? Like, I genuinely was confused by it. Certain things are permitted, others aren't. Who makes the decisions? Is that what it is? Didn't they literally throw people into unmarked vans during those protests? Yeah, cops were fucking doing drive-by shootings with like beanbag bullets. Like, this whole idea that like they were allowed to happen is completely ahistorical. Most coherent centrist. No, I wouldn't free scroll my replies. I had to look specifically up to find this. Because if I free scroll my replies, we might unfortunately run into full frontal nudity and pornography that gets posted in my mentions now. Yes, it's a Pete Buttigieg profile pic. This is an incredibly cursed account. Coddled affluent professional. At feels desperate. Superfluous elite. Center-right, Foucault-curious, anti-med Twitter, expansive liberatory agenda, overbroad definition of fascist. And yeah, I think was trying to accuse me of anti-Semitism by suggesting that, like, trying to put words in my mouth that I was not even close to saying, that somehow Jews are responsible for these protests being broken up. I guess, but I don't know. That's them like totally just putting words in my mouth in a like totally incoherent way and describing something that is not at all accurate. So anyway, I don't know what's going on with that. He says that Nice is a bucket full of eels for a skull. Really strange. Again, just this idea that those protests were allowed. Like, and this is fully like endorsed by like right-wing people, suggesting that these George Floyd protests were just allowed and people were allowed to just riot and burn things and destroy cities. Completely like completely ahistorical, totally detached from reality to believe that. Oh God. You can't trust people who name drop Foucault. You got to tell them to get the Foucault of here. I think we're overanalyzing a shitpost. It's not a shitpost. This person responds to my tweets all the time. This person responds to my tweets all the fucking time. I've muted them, so I rarely pay attention. But I saw this and I was just like, I was just so perplexed. I was just so perplexed. I genuinely didn't even understand. Have you considered that being against ethnic cleansing is actually worse than committing genocide? Well, according to all the people that are trying to create this moral panic around campus protests, that's exactly the viewpoint. Anti-Semitism is when you have a problem with jackbooted American cops brutally arresting students, including Jewish students, for protesting a genocide, and professors as well. Somebody may have said it, I just got here, but supermodel Emily Ratajkowski posted that pic and text from Rob's tweet, but didn't attribute it to Rob. Is that true? I didn't see that. Emily, what the fuck? Emily. This is awful for the clout triangle. I know. Rob suddenly... She pulled an Elon. Rob suddenly loves and respects IP. On her Instagram stories. Come on, Emily. She did a theft and she did a no growth. I did not know that. Rob, I know your instinct here is to
you're gonna have good old
make a joke about her being Polish. I please ask that you reconsider. Well, now that you've said that, it just makes me want to do it. What she skipped the class about attributing tweets because she was too busy trying to figure out how to screw in a light bulb or something. That was what's going on? Thank you, Sikalufakis, for the prime. Thank you. She couldn't see you authored the tweet through the screen door in her submarine. Oh, no. Oh, my goodness. Hey, check out my shirt. I think these are still on sale, folks. Look at this shit. Look how cool this is. You can see, you can see the path of the magic bullet being traced through the shirt. It goes all the way. Look at that shit. I like the hoodie, but you really can't see the design at all on the hoodie. Sikalufakis, congratulations. You graduate today. We love it. I'm glad to hear that. Hey, Old Dutch. It's crazy that the best graphic designer on earth is a valued community member. I know. Hard to believe. The levels of talent in this community. Off the charts. Absolutely off the charts, folks. Emily. Shit, this opens in... TRRS channel. But when I open the picture, it opens in Chrome. Wow. Wow. All that clout could have been mine. Now it just slips away like tears in the rain. Very unfortunate. Here's like some of this footage is crazy. I'm even surprised that this is airing on CNN. But like, it's really crazy footage. Professor.
Get on. Get on. Get on the ground.
Jesus Christ, putting her in like a chicken wing.
Give me some cops. Hit that to the head. My head on the concrete. Oh my God. Oh my God. You people are fascists. You are Hitler. You are laughing dog. Shame on you! May you never live another
putting
day!
Like a 65-year-old woman in a hammerlock and smashing her face into the concrete.
Professor, everyone! Professor!
Yes, it's a professor. He's an economics professor.
You are fascists!
It was a peaceful protest until they started fighting troopers.
Here's the thing, like I was saying yesterday, how in my tweet I was doing a little bit of disinformatia because like I was posting a picture of like militarized cops that weren't actually from this protest. I was just kind of making a point. But like it's not far off, right?
I agree with you.
I reacted impulsively. I apologize.
No, you're right. It's my truth now. I'm gonna share this.
When did the cops know the training of the IDF? Well, that's why it's pertinent to try and point out the connections between American cops with the IDF. Because there is a connection. A lot of these cops go do training with the IDF. I saw State Patrol and APD there, but the APD was the SWAT team, so I think the black uniform guys are either Emory PD or DeKalb County. It's really insane footage, like putting a fucking like professor who's, and to her credit, is trying to like protect her students. I like actually can't believe that aired on CNN, like considering the stuff CNN has been contributing to, in terms of framing these, like Jake Tapper at CNN is deliberately like using his platform to frame these protests and encampments as being somehow inherently anti-Semitic. And then on CNN, you see jackbooted thugs not only beating the shit out of and arresting students, but professors as well. It's crazy.
We have to disperse. We thank you all for your energy. We want you to stay tuned. If you're following us, if you're on our chats, please look there for our updates. We need everyone to disperse now to avoid arrest. Please, thank you for the energy. We need to disperse. We cannot keep marching. All right, we appreciate.
There'll be another march
but we need
soon.
to disperse.
There'll be another march soon.
We have to disperse, y'all. They're giving us a pain in the ass, but we have to disperse.
Yeah, don't jump. Don't drum.
We're being a
Okay,
pain, but
you're
we
the
have to
leader.
disperse.
You're the leader. Yeah, you are. If you don't drum, we're good. If you don't drum, we're good.
Keep the protest in your heart. Keep the protest in your heart.
He tells, okay, here's one way to get out, and we go out that way. You're still in the same group. It does nothing. That's why we wanted to go out somewhere farther away from people, so we could actually disperse. See, but you didn't let us do that. See, so now you're upset. So we hear what I'm saying. No, I'm getting out of here. No. We need to disperse. What we're saying. Like what we're saying is we
Start
just
moving.
Let's start moving. Let's go. Let's go.
Trying to do the right thing. Literally trying to disperse.
We disperse.
Stop resisting. Stop resisting. Follow directions. Follow orders. I did see Ben Gvir got hit by a car. I think he was fine, unfortunately. Yeah, I mean, it goes without saying. We've talked about this plenty. It goes without saying, but like literally one incident of this. You see one incident like this in like Cuba. I mean, they're still lecturing Cuba about the protests that happened there. The like obviously AstroTurf bullshit protests. And people are still lecturing Cuba about that and insisting that's why the sanctions regime needs to continue. And that's why they can never like take them off the state sponsors of terrorism list and all this stuff. And like not one incident like that. You see one incident like that in any other country, whether it's Cuba or Venezuela or Nicaragua or China or Russia or whatever. And that gets used to like justify sanctions, blockades, interference, destabilization, you know, whatever it is. It's really crazy. Like, it's almost useless to even point out this double standard at this point. Chad, are you still there? I'm having some weird issues here. Chad, are you with me? We out here, okay. Tom Khan was grilling the TikTok CEO about Tiananmen Square, yeah, and then let's call in the fucking troops to disrupt these protests. My browser just like frozen here? What's going on? We're here. Okay, I thought maybe I lost you for a sec. We know Biden is fucking himself over, but how come they can't see that? What do they think is going to happen? I don't know, Sean. I think part of it is that they would rather lose than like stop Israel from murdering kids. I think that's part of it. I think also part of it is that they just think that people are going to fall in line. They just think November is going to come around and they're going to say Orange Man bad and democracy is under threat and whatever, and they think people are going to fall in line, you know, because that's usually what happens. Bassem Youssef posted a video on UT and said China's crackdown on protests has to be condemned. Yeah, I mean, I did a whole bit on the Insurgents podcast episode that just came out where I did that kind of thing. Like, I'm hearing disturbing reports coming out of China. And afterwards, I was a little concerned. I don't want people to think that I'm doing the meme when it's like, what are we, a bunch of Asians, you know? but I was just making fun of China watchers. Like, hopefully that came through in the humor of what I was doing. But yeah, to answer your question, I think that's part of it. They either don't care if they lose, or they don't think they will. I think they think people are going to fall in line, and they're going to be able to bring out all the scary arguments. It's weird when it comes to Gaza as well, because like, what, do you want things to be worse? And like, genuinely, how could it be worse? Like, materially, functionally, what's the difference? What is the difference between Biden and Trump when it comes to Gaza? In fact, like I've been talking about, I think it might be even more likely that Trump could get these fucking psychos to dial it back a little bit. Not that I'm rebranding as an orange man good guy or anything like that, but suggesting that there's really a functional difference between Biden's policy on Gaza and Trump's is ludicrous. And I don't know, this whole thing like, oh, democracy. Oh, we got to save our democracy. If you vote for Biden, there'll be democracy. You vote for Trump, there won't be democracy. And then you have jackbooted thugs in like California under a Democratic president in a Democratic state with 2 Democratic senators in a city with a Democratic mayor sending in armed troops to beat the shit out of college protesters, with Biden supporters cheering them on. You know, I just like, that's why. And there's still all this stuff about Trump, and people are trying to scare, like, oh, he's under. Let's pay attention to his trial, and let's talk about this element of his trial that's going on right now. And you know what? Yeah, I get it that like the former president of the United States, like being under multiple criminal indictments, like I get that that's like a significant story, but like, me, like, why would like that? I just don't feel that. I don't find that all that compelling when it's like they're using that to fearmonger about Trump being reelected, and then they're doing everything in their power to ensure that that's the exact outcome that happens. You know, if you're going to fearmonger and lecture about Donald Trump being elected and how dangerous it is, stop acting in a way that's going to guarantee that outcome. I don't think they're being that serious when they scaremonger about this, because they're clearly acting in a way that's going to lead to Donald Trump, the big scary guy everyone's supposed to be so scared of, being reelected. Their own actions are ensuring that. No, I don't think anyone wants 4 more years of Trump and all the bullshit that comes along with that. That's the main reason people should be against the Biden administration's policy on Gaza, is because it's the right thing to do, and it's horrifying. But like, that's one of the reasons people want Biden to not do these things, so they can avoid that, because they don't want that. As much as these people that like the enlightened centrists that come in, they're like, yo, you want Trump? Most people don't. Most people want Biden to change his policy on here. Number one, because it's going to save lives, and because they're against genocide and mass murder and ethnic cleansing. But they recognize correctly that these actions are leading to that exact outcome. It's a deliberate strategy for Democrats to try and juice the absolute most demented possible Republicans so that they'll look good in comparison. This is obviously going to backfire. Now it's happening. I'm concerned about his reelection, which is part of why Democrats are so infuriating. They're treating this like a hostage negotiation. Yeah, I mean, it's just, I do not find it compelling, this like using these scare tactics to try and scare people into voting for Democrats, when they're the ones that are quite deliberately and intentionally creating the circumstances for that exact outcome to happen. Yeah, it's all more 99% Hitler bollocks. That's right. It is bollocks. 99. That's so funny. People being like, oh, you got to vote for 99% Hitler. It's like, do you? That's not compelling. That's not a good argument. You know? Why would you have to do that? It's the same thing. I don't think that was Owen Jones that Hassan was yelling at, Joe. I saw him yelling at the British person, though. That was very funny. It's the same thing. We saw that chart the other day. The chart of like the climate change chart. It's actually amazing. This Hillary Clinton, this is like, you literally could not design a more perfect encapsulation of this entire ideology, this entire liberal ideology. You really could not. What's at stake for our climate in this November's elections? Absolutely everything. And then she tweets a fucking chart that shows Biden is nowhere near hitting the targets, but slightly more close than Trump. It's like, what the fuck? It's so funny. And you even see on this chart that like it's leveling off even under Biden. It's not like they're following the path of the target, but they're actively going in the wrong direction. Why even put the target on the graph? Like someone had to know about this, that's what I mean. That's what Sean was saying, I think. This is why she's trying to run. She's showing that Biden's not good enough. She's subtly undermining them. It's just so funny. This is why you need to vote for Biden. So we can not do the thing that we're trying to, but not do it slightly better than the other guy. What's the fucking difference? Yeah, look at the 90s on the graph as well. Who was in charge then? I can't remember. I just think that's so fantastic. That's like the perfect encapsulation of like everything that these people believe in about politics. It's literally, this chart is literally the lesser of two evils. Like that's like the concept of the lesser of two evils in chart form. And then they say, how dare you say it's the lesser of two evils? Yeah, it is. It is 99% Hitler. Truly amazing stuff. Seriously. And honestly, I was genuinely surprised that this aired on CNN, considering the role that some of CNN's biggest names have played in demonizing this entire movement and suggesting these protests are inherently anti-Semitic. I'm genuinely surprised that not only did CNN air the footage of that arrest, but aired this footage as well.
Come have some matzah, come have some matzo ball soup. We're having a great time. We got plenty to go for everyone. And we'll be out here having a really lovely holiday.
Columbia University has been at the centre of pro-Palestinian protests for more than a week. Safety concerns have been raised by Jewish students on campus, but as Passover week begins, a group of Jewish and non-Jewish protesters have gathered at the university to celebrate.
There is nowhere else I should be for Passover besides here on campus.
Passover is the story of our escape from slavery in the land of Egypt. And I think we need to recognize that on Passover, it's important to stand up for oppressed people everywhere, whether they're Jewish or not.
If our gathering does not motivate us to do everything in our power to end the genocidal violence Israel is unleashing upon Gaza, we will not have fulfilled the requirements of the Passover Seder.
CNN using this is concerning music.
I am Jewish, and to me, Passover symbolizes perseverance and resilience. And I think this encampment encompasses those two ideals, because we have seen the university take countless measures to try to suppress our student activism, and here is us persevering through that.
I had seen so many statements
I saw that thing
online
friggin' banana
about how
pants with
Jews
the
weren't safe, about
expensive
how
nuts.
Colombia had turned into
They're
a
eating
hotbed of
expensive
anti-Semitism.
nuts.
Each of those statements further galvanized me to use my voice and my privilege as a Jewish person to come here and have a Seder with all of these lovely people.
I'm part of a really proud legacy of progressive Jewish activists who have participated in things like the civil rights movement or the anti-apartheid movement in the 80s, where it's so important to us to transcend the barriers of race, class, ethnicity, religion, and that's what's happening here today, and there's a lot of joy here, I think really for the first time on campus in months.
There were also many non-Jewish students who joined the Seder, and we're a little bit hesitant about whether they should eat matzah or not. We told them it was okay, you can try some matzah. It was really a beautiful thing to see in the middle of the pro-Palestinian encampment.
You know, Jake Tapper's watching this, just losing his mind. In that stupid face that he likes to do. We're going to talk to Hayat now. Just waiting for her. She'll be right here. Oh, wow. Speaking of Hillary Clinton, we're going to have to check this out after. Hillary Clinton, the sexual violence expert. New documentary screams before silence.
We would like to think that nobody would harm.
Sheds light on the unspeakable sexual violence committed on October 7th.
Nobody would harm a young girl.
حطيت رميتها على الكنبة واخذتها هيك نيمتها نمت معها.
Is this all going to be done? Listen to Release Hostages tell their stories. Is this all going to be done with like Palestinian POWs that have been tortured to confessing to things? Is that what we're doing?
His name was Muhammad. He used to sit on the bed in front of me. I knew that something bad is gonna happen.
As you can see, the body was brutal.
Are these first responders from that?
מכנסיים ותחתונים היו למטה, ירו בה במפסעה.
מעל 30 בנות נרצחו ונאנסו. הייתי צריך לסגור את הרגליים שלהם, לכסות את הגופות שלהם. שאף אחד לא יראה מה שאני ראיתי.
I'm trying to remember the name of the shady first responder group. The name of the shady first responder group that spread a lot of these lies. Yeah, Zaka. So is this just going to be like interviews with tortured Palestinians and like Zaka guys? Is that what's going on? Anyway, just saw Hillary Clinton tweet that, so just wanted to get that out there. We can take a look at talk more about that later. Anyway, here is our friend Hayat is just joining the show right now. Hello, hello. Do you hear me? Connecting to audio.
Hello?
Hello.
Hi.
Hey. Hayat, how's it going?
I'm good. How are you? Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I can hear you okay.
Perfect.
You're doing good? Thanks for joining the show.
Yeah, I'm doing okay. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, I know you can't see me right now because my camera is being used by Twitch, and I know there's a way to mirror my camera and use Zoom at the same time. I don't know how to do it though. I know there's a way. I've just never taken the time to figure it out.
Yeah, I couldn't even help you with that. I'm still like figuring out Twitch myself.
Yeah,
So
you're new to the game. A brand new streamer has entered the chat. That's exciting. How's that been going?
It's been going okay. I'm trying to just pull up the chat here, so maybe I can see you from like my phone. Maybe that could work.
Yeah.
Hi, everybody.
I'm gonna
Getting
add
an
some.
ad here.
There we go. Good.
Oh wait, maybe I should.
So yeah, again, so you're just kind of getting involved in the whole like streaming world. It's been going okay though. Like it's a fairly new thing for you, right? Like what made you want to take the plunge?
Yeah, no, it's been going pretty good. I think consistency I've figured out is key in being consistent because I'm not really good at like streaming every day. And I also stream at very like nonsensical hours. I don't know what it is, but I only get like the itch to stream at like midnight, and then my streams will go till like 4 a.m, and it's like
I'm too old. I can't do that. I got to do it during work hours, or else I get sleepy.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. I don't think anybody, if some folks who watch me are watching this, I don't think anyone's even seen my setup in the daytime. So when I turned on my my camera, I was just like, oh, is this what the what the setup looks like during the day?
Yeah. Well, no, that's cool. I mean, the streaming world is interesting. I guess that's the hard part. Like 4 years ago, I guess I was like, oh, maybe I'll check out this whole streaming world. And maybe there's something to that. I can kind of maybe try that once or twice and see how it goes. And then like 4 years later, I'm like every single day, like, okay, I'm back again. That's kind of the problem. Once you start, you can't stop. You can never leave.
Yeah. But it's really good. It's a very interesting platform because I've been wanting to make videos for so long, but it's very like time consuming. Editing is like a lot of work.
Yeah.
But with streaming, it's just kind of you jump on and you say what you need to say, and then as soon as you exit, it's out there and it's done.
That's exactly why I like it too. Like I always wanted to be a writer and everything, but I find the process of writing so painful and like agonizing over every single word and taking twice or 3 times as long as it should to put out an article that you're making very little money on. It's like you can just go and turn on your camera and just talk some shit with people, and then after it's over, you're just finished. You can just leave. You just get up and leave. It's nice.
Yeah, writing is like that's a whole nother thing. I love researching. But actually like putting it into a piece is not fun.
Yeah. No, it's not. If people enjoy it though, if other people enjoy it, I'm happy for them. Anyways, hey, I wanted to talk to you because, you know, a lot of things that you've had to say over the last couple of months have gotten a lot of traction on Twitter and elsewhere. And I know it's made you kind of a target from some pretty nasty individuals. We don't need to name certain individuals that I've had beefs with throughout the years.
Okay.
So I was just wondering like how that experience has been for you, like becoming a little bit more well known and having these kind of tweets break containment and reach this wide audience, and like the positive side of that and also the negative side, and just like how has that been for you the last couple of months?
It's so bizarre because I never thought it would ever like get to this point that it's at right now. Like I like one day just, it's very funny actually because I ended up making a Twitter account just like everybody else, and then I ended up using the Twitter account to like attack an org that I used to be a part of. And through there I just like garnered like all these like eyes, and it's just so bizarre because it's like I never thought that it would be I don't know. I just didn't think people would be listening. I didn't think like I'd make a tweet one day and I'd have like death threats the way that I get, or just I don't know. It's very comical. Like it makes me laugh sometimes when I'm not like a little bit stressed about like my safety. But yeah, Twitter is a wild place, I think. But I think it's great because it's even through like all that stuff, like I've met so like such amazing like people, and I've been like using like my Twitter account to like work with different organizations here in the city in Montreal, and it also led me to meeting you in person. That was like amazing.
That was cool.
I never thought.
Yeah,
that was really exciting.
Well, that's the thing too, because like I see that happening sometimes, and I can't help but feel for you because I know it can be really not fun when you get this big magnifying glass put on you, and you have all kinds of fucking lunatics saying all kinds of stuff about you. It's like even when you know you're right, it can still be a really shitty experience and a shitty feeling. And you know, the intent is to kind of scare you off from kind of making these kinds of statements. Usually my strategy is just when I see any kind of tweet escaping containment and people getting mad about it, I just mute it and I just move on. I just don't engage with any of that. You do kind of lean into it sometimes though, and go shot for shot with some of these people. So
yeah,
you know,
I have to. Sometimes I have to. If it's getting a little like, okay, you guys are doing a lot. Like, I'll try. But sometimes even the muting doesn't work because I've been really good at muting. But sometimes like I still want to use Twitter, and I'll just see my tweet screenshotted by somebody else. They haven't even added me. It's just like on the timeline because that tweet of my tweet being screenshotted is now going viral.
Yeah.
And it's like on a whole other side of the app, and I'm just like, oh my god.
Do you get a lot of
like
this person's in Canada?
Industrial complex of my tweets sometimes.
Yeah. Do you get a lot of this person's in Canada? You believe this? Do you ever get that? I get that a lot.
Oh, for sure. Or they'll I'll get like oh, you stupid American, like shut up.
Yeah.
And then there'll be somebody in there being like, oh, actually she's from Canada. And like that makes it worse. I'm like, all right.
Yeah, I always appreciate that. How dare these people talk about the US sponsored genocide that's going on in Gaza that also our own country is totally participating in and encouraging, and like basically we take our marching orders from the United States when it comes to Canada's foreign policy and Canada's relationship with a lot of the rest of the world. And people find it confusing somehow when people in Canada or elsewhere around the world are like commenting on things that the global hegemon that economically and militarily and culturally dominates the entire world. People are so confused that people have issues with that or want to talk about it. You know, it's very confusing to them.
Mm-hmm. No, it's very silly. Like it's very and it's funny too because I talk about Canada all the time, like all the time. So I don't know. So it's very much just like a way to like not have anybody be able to actually talk about like these issues. But I don't know. It is what it is. But
yeah, no, I know. It genuinely makes me mad when that happens. So I'm kind of bitter about it and petty. But I guess I just wanted to check in also. So it's been 6 months since this genocide and this horrible violence that we're seeing in Gaza has really kicked off. Not that there wasn't violence before, but like this latest and like especially kind of horrifying example of it. So I'm just wondering, like, as just to kind of get us the ball rolling here, like, how are you feeling 6 months into this? You know, what have your feelings been like watching this play out? and just like how where are you at right now, 6 months into this horrifying situation?
Well, it's definitely like just seeing how, well, first the fact that like people are still like talking about it is like really good. I think I people seem to have like political amnesia, and like politics kind of gets treated in a way of like trends. So the fact that we're still 6 months in and it's like people are still discussing it, the momentum hasn't died, is like amazing. And a lot of that goes to the Palestinian orgs on the ground, like continuing to keep people agitated and continuing to um uh keep people like discussing it is like super important and stuff. But yeah, it's definitely disheartening. Like every time I see something online, like, and it's something horrible, it's either like the death of a child or like a parent holding up like the limbs of like their children, I always think like there's nothing more worse than what I'm seeing right now. And then like a week will pass and
Yeah.
it'll be like even worse and like worse and worse and worse. And it's um yeah, so it's just the images that are coming out of Gaza is just like, I don't know. I think it's definitely going to be something that'll probably like stay with me for like the rest of my life. Like I don't think this is there's certain like images that I think I will like carry till,
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, just the images that we're seeing coming out right now of these mass graves and the stories that we're hearing about like people, including kids, like having their hands bound, doctors and patients in like hospital attire, evidence of people being buried alive. Like it's absolutely fucking like it's still shocking 6 months into, just like you're saying, just this nonstop stream of the most depraved things you can imagine. And it's still, there's this capacity to still be so upsetting and shocking to people, even like it's like impossible to be desensitized to it. It's just too much.
Yeah. And and then like how that kind of like translates here. There's a Palestinian mother that here in Montreal that was trying to get her daughter who had a disability into Canada and like immigrate over here and like come over here as basically as an asylum seeker. And because the immigration policy that Canada has in place that basically bars Palestinians from coming in. And it resulted in the death of her. I think her daughter was like either 11 or 13. And it wasn't she passed away because of just like not being able to have like access to like medical care. So that's like a story that was like one that like touched me personally, and just like watching. I'll send you the resource. She has an Instagram page and I'll probably put it in the chat or I'll send it to you. But she's been protesting in front of what's his name? I think it's an MP's office every day so far to like bring attention to like what happened to her daughter. But it's like, it's not like, I think oftentimes people kind of look at this conflicts like this in countries that seem so far away, and that it's not something that kind of has anything to do with like our personal lives, but it's like not true. There's people who are suffering that are possibly down the street from you that are probably just like watching their loved ones be wiped off the face of the earth. It's like not even like it's difficult to even like put into words like what is exactly happening to human beings in the name of, I don't know, imperialism. I don't even know, colonialism, capitalism is just it's
and of course when it comes to like certain other immigrants from conflict zones, i.e. Ukraine, we don't have all of a sudden the bureaucracy isn't quite there, and you don't have this like limiting of people's ability to come into the country. We have instantly like all our political figures just like, opening the door to whoever wants to come in. And you just seeing that discrepancy, especially in like such close proximity to one another. We have these conversations like a few months apart, basically, and seeing the way certain immigrant groups are treated, especially in a place like Ukraine, which is like rife with corruption and rife with all kinds of like extremism, and just like zero effort to, interrogate any of that. But then if there's a Palestinian that has anything whatsoever to do with Hamas, even though Hamas is like the governing body in civil society in Gaza, we slam the doors in their faces, and a lot of troubling historical parallels as well to marginalized immigrant groups throughout the years, including Jewish people during World War II, that we also did not allow into our country, with absolutely disastrous results as well. So it's impossible to kind of not only see the discrepancy in who's allowed to come in and who's not, but to see those parallels with the way certain other groups have been treated throughout history.
Yeah. And interesting enough, like they issued an apology for that, didn't they? About the boat of Jewish people that were fleeing Germany.
Yeah.
And they docked the shores of what was it, just of Canada, and it was actually Mackenzie King that was in charge at the time. And actually, funny enough, this was a point in history where a lot of the Western leaders saw Hitler in a very like favorable light. And turned the boat around, which what I was assuming is some sort of like an act of solidarity on Hitler's part. And I think it's like, I don't even know how many. It was like either there was like 500 of them that were on the boat, like 300 of them like passed away in Auschwitz. And so we might get an apology, I don't know, 100 years from now, of Canada still stands.
Oh yeah, yeah. No, I'm sure eventually there will be some kind of apology, or a lot of the liberal people that are going to pretend that like they didn't support this, and they're going to pretend that they always supported the protests and the resistance to this. But that's the apologies always come like way far in the future, long after it has any actual possibility of mattering to people and saving people's lives, when it's like safe to do so, not like when this kind of thing is going on.
Yeah. And somebody in the chat said the MP's name. His name, is Mark Miller. He is the Minister of Immigration, and I'm gonna put the Instagram of the mom. Her name is and please go follow her and support her, and continue to just help bring her story to, because she's like basically being ignored. She's been in front of Mark Miller's office like every day for the past like, I think so far like 2 months now, just kind of protesting, and he hasn't been in his office. He's just, I don't know, everywhere but his office, because his office is like completely decorated in like Palestinian pro-Palestinian posters and stuff, and so he's been quite literally dodging her. But yeah.
It's another huge discrepancy as well when we talk about the political figures. Most of the people in mainstream politics in Canada support Israel. With a few exceptions, and the way that we like police the language and the appearance of these small number of people with political power in this country, like Sarah Jama, and suggest that it supports terrorism or things like that, and force her to like denounce this and apologize for all these statements. And the way that like the media contributes to that and holds people that support Palestine up to this like really intense scrutiny, and asks all these tough questions and kind of makes all these assumptions about people. And the way that like none of the political leaders in this country, like Anthony Housefather is an example, he was on TV a couple weeks ago almost crying because Canada actually took a small step towards like limiting our participation in this genocide. And this guy's on TV like almost crying, and he's being coddled by this interviewer. I still haven't forgotten this because I found it so shocking. Being coddled by this interviewer about his precious feelings and how hurt they were, while like no one is held up to this kind of scrutiny that support this like brutal violence that we're seeing, and no one is asked like tough questions. How can you possibly support this? Why aren't you denouncing this? Like, why aren't you denouncing the IDF? Why aren't you denouncing this like brutal violence that you're supporting fully? This discrepancy with the way we talk about these things when it comes to our political leadership or any like protests or anything like that is so glaring. And I think that's one of the reasons that there's like this entire younger generation now that's being completely disconnected from this, that's totally rejecting this because they see how preposterous it is. And they see these like totally fucked up, wacky priorities that our people in our media or our political culture have in this country.
No, exactly. And you have like, I don't know. And it's just wild because it's like also a lot of these people like in government are like parents. They're parents themselves. They're like, I don't know how, like, I forgot what is it? Marie Jolie, who's the minister. Nope, she is Minister of Foreign Affairs. And like she has 2 kids. She's got 2 kids. And it's just like I don't know how you can sort of, be a mother and then watch images of just like parents under your discretion, right? As the foreign minister of Canada. I don't know. I'm just tapping into what like morals that perhaps don't really exist for this person. But
Yeah.
but she there was like a whole like a thing over here because somebody like approached her in the street. She was like walking somewhere in I don't know, somewhere in the plateau or whatever on a Sunday, and they were asking her to essentially like denounce Israel and there was like this whole hubbub of all these politicians that were like, politicians have the right to walk through the streets and
Yeah,
without
do they?
being harassed or whatever. And I'm like, no, you don't. You don't. Like, I'm sorry. Like, if you
Well,
want to be
people
a
were-
private citizen, quit your job, but like,
Yeah.
you don't actually get to support a genocide, defend Israel, say that they have the right to self-defense, et cetera, and think that you can go down to the plateau and get yourself a bagel in peace. Absolutely not. Like, I don't.
Well, people were protesting outside her like private residence, and then it gets turned into this moral panic. Oh, that's going too far, going to the private residence of like a somewhat powerful political figure in this country that's like endorsing and supporting this like horrible violence. And that's part of the discrepancy that I'm talking about too, because you have this big kind of fake moral panic that happens that pops up, and then you have all these people that denounce it, including like people like in the NDP, people that are supposed to be trying to take some kind of nominally pro-Palestinian position. They're like, whoa, no, we got to denounce that. That's too far. And it's just it's strange to me, honestly, people that are contributing to these like totally fake bullshit moral panics or these completely bad faith kind of equivalencies that happen, and then they undercut their own position. They undercut their own like they're trying to take some kind of like valuable position, and they undercut that by denouncing people like in their own movement that they're kind of trying to co-opt, protesting outside a politician's house or like writing in chalk slogans outside their office or whatever. This just seems to happen time and time again. It's so frustrating.
I know, it's ridiculous. And it's like, yeah, I was because I tuned into your stream earlier and you had mentioned how like a lot of this is happening under the discretion of like what like the political parties that claim to be like the lesser of evil, that they're the ones that are the bleeding heart liberals that like care about the oppressed. But yeah, I think it's interesting that like both in the United States under a Democratic president and in Canada where we have a liberal party in power, that these two governments are what like colluding, arming a government to the teeth to like slaughter people off the face of the earth. And it's like, yeah. And I've been saying for a while too that like I wonder when, because there is, I'm just guessing here that like if the conservatives get in here and Trump gets elected in the United States, there's probably going to be an attempt of like co-optation that's going to happen where all of a sudden they're going to try and to sort of remove the teeth of the Palestinian movement that's happening right now to incorporate it into their campaign, I guess, the same way that they did with BLM, because BLM started under what, like the Obama administration.
Yeah.
And it was seen negatively. And I think at one point, I think Obama even called them like thugs or something, or like, it was just like, it was not popular. Then the Democrats were out, Trump got in, and all of a sudden all these Democrats were in support of Black Lives Matter. And they see the police as like, we got to come up with a way. And it went from like abolishing the police, aka critiquing the state, to defunding it. And I think, I don't know, I'm just guessing here, but I think there's probably going to be that kind of attempt, but on the Palestinian side for sure. You already see it now. Like I just saw a photo of AOC in the encampment at Columbia. Like,
yeah, they're going to be taking a knee in Kufeya's.
Oh, for sure.
Show. No, that's the thing. I mean, you mentioned AOC. It's like you can't, like it's incoherent to try and make statements about the genocide that's going on. Like she's tried to have this critique. She's tried to advocate for Palestinians. Like you can call it half-assed or whatever. But then at the same time, she's doing photo ops with Joe Biden, putting on aviators and hanging out with Joe Biden and going to make this like lesser of two evils case to people and saying, you got to vote for Joe Biden because Trump is bad. And like this does not make sense. This is like a completely incoherent political position when you're talking about the role the U.S. government is playing in this mass slaughter of Palestinians. And then at the same time being like, by the way, you got to vote for the guy that's like fully facilitating that, because otherwise some really bad stuff could happen. Like, this is not, who is this appealing to? It's crazy that they think this is going to connect with anyone.
Yeah. No, it's insane. But I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah.
We will see. But I feel like within the movement that's happening with the students, it's very interesting because this morning I kind of just like flipped through a lot of the different like Palestinian solidarity groups that exist on like different college campuses. And I started realizing that like these encampments and how there came to be is quite literally just like a demand for divestment. And when I see that kind of play out sort of here and how it happened, how that divestment campaign existed in Montreal with the universities that exist here, Concordia and McGill, that was just like a student vote that took place. There were no encampments. It was just like, here's a policy that is going to be put forth by the Palestinian Solidarity group that exists at Concordia and at McGill. We'll bring it forth to the student union, and the students will take a vote, and we'll see. And it passed at Concordia. I think it was quite high. I think it was like 80% or something like that voted in favor for divestment, and it was a little bit lower at McGill. And at Concordia, it was passed and it was enacted, and that was it. But at McGill, what happened was like, I think they passed the vote, and then the next day, the university president issued a statement of basically denouncing the Palestinian Solidarity Group, accusing them of like obviously everything under the sun, anti-Semitism, making the campus unsafe for Jewish students, yada yada yada, and threatened, basically kicked out removed the Palestinian student group as a club, completely removed them from campus. And threatened, this is the first time, I've never seen a university do this before, threatened to basically shut down their own student union, like remove their own student union, which I didn't even know universities could do that.
Yeah. I mean, even Trudeau has like anti-BDS tweets from like 15 years ago being like just suggesting that the idea of any activity promoting BDS on university campuses is inherently threatening and anti-Semitic. This has just been the strategy for years and years and years. And I think that's the interesting thing that's going on right now, is that there's this huge discrepancy between the violence that we're seeing and these kind of like these denunciations about protest. And people are really picking up on that, right? And it's not even just about students. Like I talked a lot also about like the whole, like all the various things that we've tried to have these like hand-wringing panics about here in Canada, like the Spider-Man guy at Mount Sinai Hospital.
Right.
And we had a whole week of discourse about how terrible and scary that was. And he's intimidating doctors and patients and stuff. Just a fucking guy dressed as Spider-Man waving a flag. Yeah. On and on. And meanwhile, we're just seeing this nonstop stream of horrors happening in Gaza. And I think it's driving this disconnect that's happening. So we're seeing the same thing with this student movement right now. Everyone sees the violence. Everyone sees the absolute depravity every single day. And their natural response is to be against that and to protest that. And then you have this like coordinated effort from people in media and politics to be like, you're being anti-Semitic by even saying this is bad. And like, you can kind of understand, maybe to a certain extent, how that might have been an effective strategy over the years. But the interesting thing for me, and I'm wondering your thoughts on this, is noticing the way that this is just not having an impact anymore. And that students who maybe at one point might have been willing to kind of like entertain these kinds of accusations are just totally rejecting this. Like, have you picked up on that as well?
Oh, for sure. I think it's insane that you have like newscasts that will claim that the encampments that are happening all over these college campuses are making Jewish students unsafe. And then you literally see a photo of a person with I think it was a shirt that said Jewish people against genocide getting arrested. And I'm like, and you see amazing. Jewish students taking like having celebrating Passover in the middle of the encampment. Like it's clear that there's mass amount of efforts that is being put into place to drawing a solidarity between Muslim and Jewish and Arab, Jewish and non-Jewish students, all united as a front to get their universities to essentially stop funding and funding genocide, basically. And that's completely ignored. So there's the reality of those within the encampment and that see it with their own eyes, and you have the media that's quite literally just painting a whole sort of narrative that quite literally just doesn't exist, right? Yeah. And painting that narrative to appease people like, what's his name, Shai Davide or whatever that guy's name is.
Yeah,
it's going around like stomping his
the
feet
primary victim of the last 6 months.
Somewhere. Yeah, and it's just wild to me, and it's like, and then you find out later. I was talking about it on stream a couple nights ago, where his dad is like a billionaire, an Israeli billionaire that never like fails. Funds. Yeah, I'm like, what? Like, this is just like, what is this? Like, this is becoming like somewhat of a joke, right? And so, I don't know. It's wild. And then like going back to like seeing what the demands are for the students specifically at Columbia, where a lot of people are saying that like, oh well, what the heck does it matter? Like, why are college students like protesting against this, right? And then you look at Columbia, they were able to sort of find out that I think it's something like 0.66% of funding is public. Columbia funding is public, while the rest of it's not. 0.66% is what they were able to get access to, these students, of how much money is going to companies like Lockheed Martin and Raytheon and all these other places. And they were able to determine from just that, like literally less than 0.% of the money that their tuition is going to essentially fund these weapon manufacturers, right? And so their demand is pretty simple. Like, they want the full report of where all this money is going, of where their own tuition, right? Like, it's some in Colombia is like what they pay, I don't even know, some ridiculous numbers, like 40 grand a year.
Yeah.
Anyways. And to divest from that. That's a pretty, I don't know, basic demand. I don't see that as any kind of like
yeah.
In fact, in the way that the media is painting it, you see like it's like they see it as like I don't know, a student Hamas section that's being like built within the center of New York City or whatever. But it's not that. Like,
yeah, no, I think that's really bizarre, the way that they like totally obfuscate these very clear demands and kind of make this totally outrageous claim that like these are just like groups of students that are just calling for Jewish people to be killed or Jewish people to be deported, which is not fucking happening. And again, we're talking about this disconnect that exists between the way that things are talked about versus the reality. I think another thing we were talking about as well when it comes to Columbia was like the way that the school tries to talk about the history of protests there, either in the 60s with the Vietnam War or in the 80s with the anti-apartheid movement. And I think there's some really interesting connections with the anti-apartheid movement and the Palestine movement. And the way the school kind of tries to like co-opt that legacy and talk about how important these like radical student movements were, and even acknowledging fault in the past for coming down against these movements with a heavy hand, while simultaneously calling in state-sponsored like jackbooted thugs to come and arrest their students. Like, it's truly amazing that they're trying this, to simultaneously take credit for this legacy of activism in the same breath as calling the cops on student activists today, or calling them anti-Semites, or trying to do whatever they can to delegitimize them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I see somebody in the chat saying that they've never seen their demands mentioned. And it's done on purpose.
Yeah.
Because if you're someone who say perhaps maybe at this point, I don't know how you don't know anything about what's going on in Palestine, but let's just say for a second you live under a rock, right? I think it's like pretty rational to say, I don't want my money going to the military to fund wars somewhere else. Like, that's a pretty rational ask. But removing the rationality from that is how people are able to paint these students that are like, what, 21, 19. I saw kids that were getting arrested that were like, they were in their first year of university. They're literally getting kicked out of school at age 19. Like,
yeah,
for saying, I don't want my tuition, my education I want to be able to go to school and know that the money that I'm paying to this university is not going to people getting murdered on the other side of the world. Like,
Yeah.
And you see it play out on our phones. This is the thing that's so interesting is like we're at a certain point in like the digital age where like we can literally see conflicts and war and suffering and imperialism and colonialism being played out on our phones, right? So I can't even imagine just like, you going to a university like Columbia, knowing that they have a relationship with weapons manufacturers and seeing what your tuition is doing when you open your phone. Like that's why these kids are anyways, I think it's just, but it's done on purpose. You go on these like on CNN and stuff, they don't ever mention their demands at all. But
yeah, I was actually surprised to see on CNN actually doing a small amount of coverage on the fact that there are a sizable number of Jewish students part of this protest, and actually showing some of the police violence towards students and even professors as well. I was like shocked that it even aired on CNN. But yeah, I think you're talking about the way that like we've all been watching this play out on our phones, and one feeling that it's just impossible to escape is this feeling of total helplessness when you see the level of depravity that we've been seeing, and we are perfectly aware of the ways that our own governments are complicit in this and supporting it. And it has this feeling of like, I'm so helpless to stop this. And that's what's inspiring, I think, about this moment, and seeing all the activism over the last 6 months. But there does seem to be this kind of next step being taken right now, where you see people who are coming from places of real privilege. Like you talked about the tuition at some of these schools.
Yeah.
And are actually using that and to materially put some skin in the game to do whatever they can to have forced these schools to divest. And also really impressively ensuring that that the attention doesn't get taken away from Gaza, and not trying to co-opt that or pretend that like they're the victims of it. It's been really amazing to see this kind of develop, right?
Yeah. And it's like, and it's nice because it's like, this is just like, now it's taking it to like the next step, right? And like classes are going to be wrapped up in like a couple of weeks, and the year is going to be done. We're going to see another manifestation of these demonstrations now unfold into the summer and see what that looks like, and it'll be if it goes for another 6 months, it'll be a whole year of just like militant action, militant work. But the question is like the only thing I'm like worried about, and maybe I'm just being paranoid, but paranoid in the right way, is that co-optation is like at an all-time high, and that keeping people's feet to the fire, not just politicians, the media too. And like I've been telling people, like, keep lists of every single journalist that so much is like, lied about things around like the supposed sexual violence that was committed, 40 dead babiys and going into ovens. I don't know what they were saying. All the stuff that they were remixing at the beginning of this. Because there's going to be a certain point where like these journalists and these politicians are going to try and rebrand their image like they didn't do all of that in the beginning, right?
Yeah.
And so so I would just say co-optation is definitely something I'm like is at the top of my mind, and people I don't know, trying to rehabilitate the fact that they didn't support a genocide for like a whole a year, 2 year, or whatever, how long this goes on for. But
I think that was one of the frustrating things too, because I think by like October 10th, which I think was the time that Sarah Jama put out her statement and got censored and kicked out of her caucus for it, like the death toll was like already at like 1,000 at that point. So like there was no excuse even then, like even in the days following October 7th, when all the propaganda was really being churned out and all the lies were being told, there was still no excuse at that point to not know exactly what was going to happen. So yeah, I don't think people should get credit for like several months later, when it's then safe, like after tens of thousands of people have been killed, long like after it could have made a difference, to then try and like take credit for taking some kind of moral stance on it. Like, you had an opportunity to do that and you didn't do it. So, that's definitely something
every time I read, I went back. I remember when that letter dropped, when Sarah Jama dropped that letter. I remember reading it and thinking, like, at the time, like, this is the most
tame thing I've ever read about. Like, it's like, even now, I'm just, all she said was a ceasefire, and then pointed to the fact that like Israel has been occupying Palestine for 75 years. Something that's very like basic 101 stuff. And the way people reacted to it.
No, it's insane.
She might as well have stood up there and I don't know, just declared that they were a member of Hamas. It wouldn't have made a difference. The reaction would not have been any different, I think, personally.
No, that's how it was treated. It was insane. No, I think it's
even now, the way it's like, I don't even know what's going on in the Ontario. They're trying to stop people from wearing the keffiyehs. Is that's what's happening?
Yeah. Well, and they kicked her out the other day for wearing one.
I don't even know. It's just like laughable. I can't even. It's anyways. I have to take Canadian politics into doses, because if I just watch the stuff that goes on, I will lose my mind.
It's very painful to look at. I know. I know. But I mean, you talked about that, the idea of like where this is going to go over the next 6 months. Certainly Israel doesn't seem like they're have any interest at all in like stopping the violence. So, the protests are going to continue. It seems like all these crackdowns that they're trying to initiate right now on these campuses are just radicalizing these students even more and creating more protests elsewhere. So it is reaching this kind of like boiling point. It feels like where we're not sure where it's going to go, but it's like, you're plugged into like student activism and stuff like that. It does feel like there's been this kind of fundamental shift, doesn't it? Like it feels a little bit like with this generation that there's been this real break between, the young people especially, and the state, the ruling class, and the way that this is just completely being rejected. This radicalization is increasing. People, yes, these student activists are like, there's that statement from Emory the other day, connecting the Palestine movement to like other issues about class struggle and anti-racism and imperialism. And we're kind of like seeing this young generation right now kind of start to really crystallize all these concepts and get it. And like you pointed out, obviously the co-optation is really important to pay attention to and ensure that doesn't get diluted or anything like that. But at the same time, it's hard to take like positives from such an event that's been so terrible. But there is a kind of excitement, I feel like, right now when you see the possibilities for how that could maybe take shape in the future. Like, as someone that is kind of plugged into that world of student activism, is that something that like it gives you a sense of like optimism at all or inspiration?
Oh, for sure. Like, I think, I think having also just optimism, I think is like, is just required by anyone that like advocates for justice, that advocates for framework and like an anti-imperialist framework, because you quite literally just don't have anything else. Like, you're just riding off of just being opportunistic, and that being steadfast in what you're saying is sounded in truth and in reality. And but yeah, I think too, and I think about like how people are being radicalized, especially people who are closer around my age. A lot of it also just has to do with the fact that like things just like economy wise, it's just like not great for a lot of people.
No,
a lot of people like myself are living working not the best jobs,
like a Twitch streamer.
Yeah. Well, we'll see how that works out. But anyways, yeah, please subscribe to my Twitch. Anyways, I think and it's just like, you just have to most people my age are just kind of like living paycheck to paycheck, either going to school or just like going to work, and really just kind of like the idea of them owning a home one day is just like not even in anybody's mind. And it's just and then you see what how our governments are using our tax dollars. How is it that like our governments, when it comes to things like Ukraine, can like snap their fingers and send $600 million all the way over to this war, and not come up with policies in place where people could have like, I don't have a doctor. Like, every time I get sick, I'm at the mercy of walking clinics and the hospital if it's like really bad, and it's like, I don't know. It's just like we're at a point where it's just like we're questioning our own conditions and looking at the hypocrisy of the people who claim to say that they care about us. And it's like how that like that alone is what's radicalizing people. And then with everything on top of that, it's impossible not to see just like the blatant contradictions that are just like in our face. Like the government has never come knocking on our door asking us like, oh, do you want to get in a war with Russia? Does that sound like a good idea to you?
Yeah.
Like they've never done that. But I think it's just and I've been just like talking to like so many people like within my life, and it's kind of just like it's not I think that the contradictions are rife among the youth, and they're seeing it and they're pointing it out and they're calling it out, and I think it's a good thing. And yeah, you're right, it's exciting, and it's like, okay, now that we know that we see the bullshit, we gotta like move it to action. That's like the most important part, because we can't just sit here and be, I don't know what, like, I don't know, armchair revolutionaries or whatever. It has to be put into practice, and seeing that play out with these encampments is like such a, I don't know, such a great use of the things that we're kind of discussing here, and it's discussed among young people just in general, but.
Yeah, like you said, it's this confluence right now of declining material conditions, especially for these younger generations that have less than what their parents did, less economic sovereignty, like less ability to own a home, working longer hours for less benefits, less retirement, with the violence that we're seeing the government. I'm lumping myself into this young category, even though I'm on the old spectrum of it.
Yeah.
But then seeing the violence that our government is perpetrating around the world, and also you have this coming like deteriorating climate conditions as well, and this kind of terrifying fear for the future there, and what the future holds on that front. And also seeing the way like people like Justin Trudeau or Joe Biden will talk about the climate as if they care, they're doing anything to prevent that outcome from happening or to make things better, and seeing them just like completely fail to ever even really do that. So it's just this, on so many levels, it's this mass disillusioning event. And then they see the media telling them what we should be focused on, like the anti-Semitism crisis in Palestine movements and all this bullshit, and people are just totally rejecting it. So it's all these things coming together to completely like deprogram basically the entire upcoming generation of people. Which is interesting.
And another thing about that too is like I've been like sort of because I think I made a tweet about this a long while ago, but like the accusations of like anti-Semitism just like happening within like I've seen articles where people have said like, oh, anti-Semitism has gone up like 400%.
Yeah.
And I always implore people to look at like when articles say that, or when tweets say that, to like click the article and look into which organizations they're citing. And it's typically like the ADL, or there's another one, I forget what it's called. I think it's just called the American Jewish Advocacy Center. It's one of the oldest Jewish advocacy centers. I think they became a thing in like 1909 or something. And so they didn't originally start as like a pro-Israel lobby. Like they just advocated for the rights of like Jewish people at a time where someone being Jewish was like, that was a prosecuted people, right?
Yeah.
But now and today, in the way they've manifested today, they're just like pro-Israel, like that's it. And when you look into these organizations like the ADL and the Jewish Advocacy, America's, anyways, I'm like messing up the acronym here, but they include the critiques of Israel to be anti-Semitic. They include the symbol of the keffiyeh to be anti-Semitic. They include saying Free Palestine to be anti-Semitic, right?
Even so when Jewish students are saying it.
Exactly. And so when they look at these movements, and obviously what else has happened since October 7th, there's been like a huge wave of just pro-Palestinian demonstrations. And here in Montreal, they've been happening every single weekend, right?
Yeah.
So of course, if your definition of anti-Semitism is Free Palestine, every time somebody is saying Free Palestine, they're concluding that in the statistics. And it's bad because it's like, there are actual attacks that are happening against Jewish people, but they're being conflated with just people with like Palestinian stickers and stuff. And it's like, in a way, they themselves are like diluting the real like actual attacks of like synagogues to be what somebody saying free Palestine. Like, come on now, like that's not. So yeah, so I just say like be wary of those like those claims of just like anti-Semitism on the rise. It's risen 500%. And it's like, okay,
yeah. Well, and honestly, it's worth pointing out, and this can sometimes come across as like a little insensitive, but I think it's worth having this conversation when we talk about this rise in anti-Semitism, the way that like certain forms of racism are completely accepted and institutionalized in our society. Racism towards like Arabs or Muslims or other immigrant groups, other marginalized groups, the way that like certain groups actually experience like systemic discrimination in housing, in over policing, in over incarceration, and all these ways that like there's this state sponsored discrimination, to say nothing of the rhetoric that happens in the media or politics or anything like that. That just doesn't affect Jewish people the same way. Like, and that's not true in the past. In the past, like you point out, Jewish people have been persecuted against in some of these areas, but that's not really what happens anymore. So with this fixation on anti-Semitism, which is entirely based in like people's opinions on Israel, a country and an ideology, and the physical material things and violent actions that they're taking, with this idea of like this discrimination that is so much more pervasive against other groups in our society, it makes this completely like backwards, unbalanced, asymmetrical analysis of like who experiences discrimination and racism in our society that's completely untethered from the actual reality, right?
Yeah. And it's like, did we forget that like a Palestinian like 5-year-old boy was like stabbed?
Yeah.
And died? There was another group of youth that were walking back from their university campus. I forgot where exactly. And he was stabbed and is now paralyzed from like the waist down.
I think that was in Pennsylvania, actually, which is where fucking John Fetterman is from, who's like Mr. Pro-Israel guy.
And then in Colombia, there was a chemical attack. There was a student that experienced some kind of chemical that was like thrown in their face. And so like, I don't know. I think it's like, but you're 100% right. There's the racism that, students who are Palestinian that are Arab are experiencing. The violence that they're experiencing is just like kind of brushed off. Whereas like, I don't know, a Palestinian sticker and like the claims of people apparently being uncomfortable on campus is then put on the spotlight and like, anyways, it's just wild to me. I don't know.
It is wild. Yeah. But like you said, I just think there's this whole generation that is just totally rejecting this narrative. And like the more they try to promote this narrative, like political figures and media figures, the more it's like, the more ridiculous it seems, because we can all look and see the violence that's happening, and we totally understand why these protests are happening, and it's just becoming less and less effective, which I guess is something that's important to look at and to feel kind of like optimistic about. And like you talked about the ways that like we need to be worried about co-option and things, and this like the radicalization that's happening in this younger generation. And this is something else that also sometimes comes across as insensitive when I talk about it, but it's something that I do think is really important, which is that the fact that there's kind of like this effort for people that are kind of like plugged into these kind of like social justice-y movements, or the Palestine movement or the indigenous rights movement, and trying to take the activism and the work that's being done for these like really important movements, and trying to direct that towards like enemies of the West, and trying to say like, if you care about Palestine, you also have to criticize China, and you have to support Ukraine, and trying to do this kind of mental gymnastics when we can all look and see the United States government sending billions of dollars to Israel, to Ukraine, and to Taiwan, and these other kind of groups, and trying to kind of like make this case that like, we need to support certain of these groups that are recipients of Western financial aid and weapons and support and things like that. But we also need to stand with their victims. And like you had a tweet a couple weeks ago that people got extremely mad about, when there was someone that was trying to like trying to suggest that China was like forcing Muslims to eat during Ramadan and refusing to allow people to fast. And it kicked off this whole round of discourse, which I found amazing, where people were like, people were showing like evidence to you about like using like, my uncle works at Radio Free Asia and he told me about this, like this situation, and just deeply fucked up. So I'm just wondering what, if you could just talk a little bit about that experience, and if you have feelings about this effort that people are making to use this kind of language of like anti-imperialism or decolonization or whatever to direct that energy towards like official Western enemies, and like, which tacitly kind of like supports the status quo rather than challenges it.
Yeah. Yeah, because like, well, first of all, that tweet, I like didn't stream for 3 days after that because I was legit afraid of like getting jumped in chat. Like I was like, I just had to go like crazy. Undercover for a little while. Like I was just like, the streets are too hot right now. I am scared. But yeah, how I even came across that and where that even came from was, I don't even want to say the podcast's name because like honestly, it's just, the podcast is basically like about it's a podcast that I listen to. It's one of the only podcasts that I was listening to that actually have nothing to do with politics. They kind of just, it's like a storytelling podcast and they interview just Muslims and it's just like kind of focusing on like their own like personal like anecdotal stories, and like it's just, yeah, and it's just a storytelling podcast. And so one episode they did where they interviewed 2 girls, and the title was like, I forgot, it didn't say anything about Uyghurs or Xinjiang or anything. I think it was a different title. So when I clicked it, I didn't even realize what I was listening to. And yeah, and then halfway through the episode, I figured out that it's like obviously like these 2 girls talking about that are Uyghur, that are talking about essentially like the quote unquote genocide that's like going on in China against the Uyghur people. And I stopped and I paused it because I was like, all right, here we go. And I scrolled down because you know how like they can people will put links in on Spotify that you can sort of like click to for resources. And I clicked it and I scrolled, and it was like a coalition organization made up of other orgs that focus on Ukraine, that focus on issues around Uyghurs, and they focus on issues around Jewish people. And literally it took me 3 seconds and I clicked on them, and they're Zionist organizations, full blown. And I quote tweeted them and I'm like, this is a nice podcast. Would you mind explaining why you're sharing links to Zionist organizations that quite literally support Israel, when 2 episodes ago you did an episode on Palestine? And then they played it off as like, oh, we didn't see, we weren't aware. And then I started doing digging on like who these girls were. In the episode, they quite literally say both of their fathers work for Free Radio Asia, right? Which is just a CIA media conglomerate that's quite literally just dedicated to pushing the CIA. And the CIA has admitted this, right? There's little documents that say that Free Radio Asia is a propaganda arm of the CIA, right?
Yeah.
And I find photographs of one of the girls who I think was photographed with Donald Trump, where she's standing next to him and he's signing in a policy that quote unquote protect minority groups that are being prosecuted in other countries. And the day that picture was taken, it was like 6 months later, he enacted what was called the Muslim ban that included places like Palestine, Somalia, and Yemen, and all these other places. So it's just like it. And then and then I made that tweet, and it just was like a whole thing. And then the whole like, they're forcing people not to fast. To this day, I haven't gotten an answer on how you can force somebody to eat. I don't know how that works. I'm still waiting on it. So if somebody in the chat can explain that to me, that would be great.
Well, there's examples of the U.S. government doing that in like Guantanamo, but I don't think that's what these people were talking about.
Of forcing people to eat?
Yeah, but like I don't think that's what people were like referencing, because it's like extremely ugly, like gross fucking torture shit that the United States government was doing.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think the idea that you're just like, forcing people to not fast or whatever is not exactly the exact same thing. And it's impossible to think of how that would actually work in practice.
And yeah, and I don't know, like I just kind of had it back and forth. It got very ugly, and I ended up just like muting it. And I was like, I had enough. But yeah, I think it's just like that was just a pretty good example of just like people who kind of just like treat politics as like a buffet table, and like will hear something somewhere, not actually investigate, not actually look into it, and just throw a little infographic, right? And it's so interesting. It's like people will keep on claiming like there's some kind of like mass genocide that's happening in Xinjiang, and it's just like I've never seen a group of people continue to claim that there's a genocide happening somewhere and not show photographs. Like,
yeah.
And it's just like infographics, the same like Canva infographics over and over and over again. And they're using images where they're running out of pictures actually to show of like Uyghur people, that they're using photographs of another Muslim ethnic group that exists in China called I don't even know how to pronounce it. It's Huai, I think, or Hui. And it's another ethnic group of Muslims in China that no one ever talks about because they're not like, but yeah, exactly. Somebody put it in the chat. But, and then thinking about how that then connects to Ukraine, because I saw another image where somebody posted a picture. I think it was an illustration of mushrooms, and they've put the flags of each of like Palestine, Ukraine, Xinjiang, and they're like, all these movements are connected.
And by the way, that person that shared that infographic works for like a Tibetan advocacy org that takes money from the National Endowment for Democracy, which is another CIA cutout.
Mm-hmm. And you look into, especially when you look into Ukraine and the weapons that Ukraine has been receiving in order to quote unquote fight this unwinnable war against Russia, the same companies like Lockheed Martin that are giving them these weapons are the same weapons that are killing and manufacturing a genocide against Palestinians. And it's like, I don't understand how in one breath you can say, we didn't need to give arms to this group of people, and the same company are also manufacturing a genocide somewhere else. And it's like, it's just like the cognitive dissonance that is just happening among people is just like, it's so hard to explain. I don't know if it's like, it's like, I can't even articulate how idiotic sometimes people are. Like, it's not, I don't know if they're doing it on purpose, if they genuinely think, if they mean well, because half of it's like, okay, I understand you hear a horrible story somewhere of people suffering, right? So the natural reaction is to sympathize with it. But at a certain point, you have to sit down and be like, okay, what's like actually going on here, you know?
Well, this is why it's so nefarious, because these narratives play on people's sense of like right and wrong and their sense of social justice. And like you said, people don't want to stand idly by while these horrible things are going on. And it plays on these really good and admirable qualities that people have when they're displaying towards Palestinians. And they try to redirect that in this way that actually enforces empire rather than like challenging it. And this is something, like I said, this can be a really difficult conversation because people get really upset about it. But I think it actually is important in this moment to identify when that's going on and try and push back on it. Like you talk about these like Canva infographics about this genocide that's going on. It's not only
they need
just
to
like
shut down Canva. Canva needs to go. I'm so sick of that app. Like I'm tired
seriously. But the thing, it's not even like the images that they're using, but the data that they're using to talk about it is all being sourced to like the Victims of Communism Foundation and these like think tanks that are sponsored by the very arms manufacturers that are profiting from that profit from increased hostilities and tensions. And that are profiting from like the war in Ukraine and just sending weapons to Israel as well. And a lot of these like diasporic groups that are the most loud about like the need to like promote this kind of idea are also sponsored by the United States government and the Canadian government and have these like deep ties to like the national security state. And people really need to like take a moment to think about that. Like I said, I know it can be really difficult to have these conversations, and even when we talk about China and this kind of stuff, I don't even want to have some kind of like blanket, full, uncritical support of single thing that they do. Obviously, like we do know that there was this like de-radicalization program or like a re-education program, or like they called them vocational schools that people were kind of like mandated to go to. And there's plenty of things you can criticize about that, but like, at the same time, you can't look at the violence in Gaza and suggest that there's any real comparison to be made with these two policies. Like And just the fact that like anyone can go to this region, like you can just get a ticket to go there and there's no bombs being dropped. And you can look at videos of seeing people and different cultures practicing their religion and going to mosques and having festivals and the religious festivals and things like that. So it's just really bizarre to me to try and make this case that these things are comparable when we can just clearly see with our eyes that there's a massive difference and a disparity. And we're seeing one situation of like brutal, grotesque violence, and another situation that's entirely all the information we have about it is coming from these partisan sources and with ties to the security state and the intelligence community and the weapons manufacturers. And that's, like I said, I think that's important at this time, is to ensure that this energy right now that we're seeing of people correctly understanding the horrifying things that our empire kind of stands for, not allowing that to be co-opted and redirected it into these places where it actually upholds these exact same forces rather than like challenging them. And that's the kind of, it's difficult to have these conversations and people get very upset about it, but I actually still think it's really important that we do it.
Yeah. And like, I'm sorry, but as somebody who's like, has been Muslim like their entire lives, you are not going to convince me that the same governments that don't care about Muslims in Palestine, that don't care about Muslims in Iraq, that didn't care about Muslims in my home country where my parents are from, that all of a sudden that this specific distinct ethnic group in China, those are the Muslims that they care about. Like, you're not going to convince me. I'm sorry. No. And it's just like, it's ridiculous that like, and it was wild because like that tweet, as people, there was like simultaneously people so there's this term called takfir where people like will basically say that you're not a Muslim, which is a very extreme accusation in Islam. It's like basically to people, it's a very extreme accusation. So as people are literally saying that I'm a disbeliever, there's people in my comments that are like, I'm in Xinjiang right now and I broke fast with a bunch of Uyghurs. I don't know what these people are talking about. But the person that's kept telling me that I'm going to hell was getting like thousands of likes. And like, I was like, okay, I don't know. I digress.
Yeah, no, I know. Well, I mean, even the same thing, like one of the primary people that played a role in talking about this narrative that specifically used this language of genocide against the Uyghurs in Xinjiang is Mike Pompeo, who not only was the head of the CIA, so it's not like it's this big, you're not being under this tinfoil hat conspiracy. Oh, I think it's the CIA promoting this kind of like idea. No, it's literally the fucking former boss of the CIA talking about like promoting this narrative. And he also made his name as like this extreme reactionary politician who was Islamophobic and who like talked about Muslims and tried to scaremonger about Muslim infiltrators in the United States and promoted the U.S. war on terror, which was absolutely like devastating to hundreds of thousands of people. I mean, that's a whole other angle to this actually that I think about a lot when we see people in our government talking about China and their treatment of Muslims or these different ethnic groups, which again, we don't need to say is like perfect or there's nothing to criticize.
No.
But then you have the United States and Canada and the whole war on terror of the last 20 years, invading countries, like overthrowing governments, funding and arming proxy wars in like Libya and Syria and elsewhere, bombing weddings and funerals and hospitals, and just like warrantless drone assassinations, CIA sponsored torture prisons, torturing people. Like, and we're really taking their word when they complain about like the treatment of Muslims and ethnic minorities in a place where no bombs have been dropped and there's nothing anywhere near that kind of violence and depravity that's gone on. That's what I mean. It's like people really do, no matter what their sense of social justice is that can be manipulated by these kind of conversations, they really do need to be better at like really thinking about this and thinking about who's making these accusations and what they're actually contributing to when they kind of promote these narratives that we've got to, support these kinds of initiatives. Like people really do need to really think about that and who's benefiting from that.
Yeah. No, I see somebody in the chat saying, didn't Trump impose the Muslim ban? Well, yes, Trump was imposing a Muslim ban while saying that China was genociding Muslims. Like, yes. And the guest that was on that podcast that I was fighting with on the timeline was there in that picture when he was signing that bill about protecting ethnic minorities in I don't know, authoritarian governments or authoritarian countries. And so I don't know, it's just crazy. All I say is like people just I don't know, do follow the paper trail. Like I don't know how else to just do your research. Like I don't know. Like and it wasn't that hard. And I straight up don't even believe them when they were like, oh, it was a mishap. How do you put a link and I scroll and it takes 2 seconds and I see 3 Zionist organizations in this link of a coalition of other orgs that in one breath they're talking about, you know, forced labor in Xinjiang. And then right beside it, it's like, you know, free or, you know, support Israel or whatever, donate to Israel. And I don't know. It's just ridiculous. Like I don't know.
Yeah.
I get very angry when I talk about this.
No,
Because,
I know.
I don't know. At a certain point, I was just getting gaslit. And I was like, I don't.
Yeah, well, like I've said up front, like even when you're in the right, it's not pleasant to have hundreds or thousands of people saying this kind of shit to you. Like it's hard not to be affected by that. Yeah, and it goes into the Ukraine stuff as well, where people say like you got to support Palestine, you got to support Ukraine as well. They're both just people that are just being invaded and just and murdered for nothing. But like again, it's like if that's the case, then why is the United States government sending billions of dollars worth of weapons to Israel and Ukraine at the exact same time? Like this should just that in and of itself should give people pause. You don't have to like support Russia or Putin or whatever to recognize that like it's not quite as simple as people are breaking it down. Like the United States government funds these countries, whether it's Israel or Ukraine, because they're like proxies, because they're like client states, because they're like colonial outposts of the West. You know, Israel is there to control and dominate the Middle East. Ukraine is there to try and destabilize Russia, and you know, put American missiles like directly on the Russia's border, and then they want to do the same thing to Taiwan and turn it into another proxy state as well to destabilize China. Like, it's not really that complicated, but people get really twisted up, and they have a really hard time kind of understanding these kind of concepts, which I feel like should be relatively kind of obvious. And I guess that's the hope right now with these like student protests and the kind of radicalization that we're seeing is that maybe people will get this, you know, that's kind of my hope is that they will kind of understand this concept and recognize that the Palestinian movement is an anti-imperialist movement and like follow that, like where that leads, which means, struggling against Western imperialism and understanding like how that works and how that functions. So I'm hoping that's what's going to happen.
No, me too. I kind of wanted to share this link from it's called Claritin Unity Struggle and Unity. And it's they put together this like a document that kind of helps people sort of organize on their campuses. So if there's anybody watching where you're at a university where there's no encampment that's going on and you want to start one, this is a really good like pamphlet to sort of help you sort of establish like different committees around like self-defense, communication, health and welfare, and like political education. And there's also a little section that kind of has recommended readings that you can read aloud amongst yourselves, or readings that you can read alone and study together. So I'm going to put that in the chat because it's a really good pamphlet that I've been sort of sharing around with folks. But the Unity Struggle, Unity Press is a really good like a site that I like go to a lot, and they have a bunch of like revolutionary texts and then like critiques on stuff. So I definitely suggest folks to go check them out. But yeah.
Cool. Yeah, and I know like I'll let you go soon because we've been talking like an hour. I don't want to keep you too much longer, but I know it has been a little bit different with like Canadian schools and everything like that. I know I'm pretty sure a lot of classes are already finished at McGill, so there's not quite the same level of like possibility for encampments and stuff like that, but there is a lot of actions going on. There's protests obviously still happening constantly, so definitely good to point people to where they can get involved with that. I know it's definitely been an antidote to some of the hopelessness and the horrors to be involved in that movement. So it's a good way to give people as many outlets as possible to participate in that.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want to, before we get going, do you just want to like let people know where they can watch your stream and find your stuff and just
Yeah,
before
so
we get
my
going here?
stream, it's the same as my Twitter. So I'm gonna type that into the chat. So that's my Twitter, same on Twitter and same on, well, I guess you could just click my name there, I guess. I don't know. Okay. But yeah, so follow me on Twitter. I might be going live later tonight. So if there's any folks in the chat that are night owls, I'm your gal.
Cool.
So please follow and you can get the notification through there. Thank you so much for having me, Rob.
Yeah, it was great to talk to you. I'm glad we could find the time to do it, and it was great to meet you IRL a couple weeks ago. And yeah, we'll do it again soon. We'll talk again soon.
Okay.
Thanks again.
Okay. Bye.
Okay, that was fun. It was Hayat. That was so cool. Aim Ed, thank you for gifting a sub 53 minutes ago, and thanks for the tier 1 sub as well a couple moments ago. Aim Ed, very cool. I'm glad you could join the stream today, and thanks again to Hayat for coming on. She's a real one. she goes hard, which is something that I appreciate, and a lot of extreme dipshits have tried to say a lot of stuff about Hayat, but we're full Hayat supporters over here. Did nothing wrong. We could do regular Hayat segments if she's down. History will absolve Hayat. I agree. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Anyway, folks, I've been going almost 3 hours here. Not only should you follow and support Hayat's stream, but if you can, also please support this stream that you're currently watching right now as well. As you know, or as you may know, the only way that I'm able to
have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
The only way that I'm able to do this show day in, day out over here on twitch.tv, do this show
you can count on
3-4 hours a day.
Rob to talk
Monday,
you through
Tuesday,
all this.
Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. The only way I'm able to do it is if this little number at the bottom of the screen
You've just
goes
become
up.
an elite member of the Friendship Triangle.
Anon, thank you for the gifted sub, and thank you so much, John McCain. John McCain's Ghost for the 5 gifted subs. Very generous as well. Thank you, John McCain's Ghost. Please support this stream if you can, folks. The little number must go up. That's the golden rule of this cursed platform.
You can count on me. You're gonna have good old Rob.
Is that the little number must go up each and every day. So if you enjoy this show, if you enjoy tuning in, if you enjoyed the discourse and the commentary and the analysis and the conversation today and yesterday and every other day, please do subscribe if you can. It supports the work that I do on here. It supports the community. You also join the base level of the Friendship Triangle system. That's social media's only 2-dimensional triangle-shaped friendship access and trickle-down clout tiered reward system. The only
you can count on me.
The only such
good old Rob to talk you through all
system
this.
that exists on this entire
Fear
platform.
the deer.
Fear the deer, Plunger Man. Thank you for the 31 months tier 2. Thank you, Plunger Man, for that. We do have a hype train on the horizon as well. So another gifted sub would kick off a hype train. Yeah, please do support the program if you can. You can join the base level of the Friendship Triangle system. And by gifting subs, you can move up and down in the 2-dimensional Friendship Triangle tiered reward system. You can move up into the Chaos Zone, which is lorded over by Lodane, our very own Lodane. Or with a gift of 5 gifted subs or above, you can move all the way up into the elite tier of the Friendship Triangle system. So if possible, please do that. In fact, we do have a number of new viewers today, so I think it would be a good time to, if you're not familiar with this community, to let you know what it's all about. And I'm going to show you right now. And again, we're close to a hype train. One more gifted sub could kick off this hype train. And if you're not familiar with what this community is all about, I'm going to just show you this little onboarding video. Please do support the stream if you can. Again, the little number, it's down there now. Little numbers got to go up every single day. It's the only way that I can keep doing this show. So here you go. If you're not familiar with the community, this is what it's all about.
Thank you for expressing interest in the Friendship Triangle community. We would be thrilled to have you on board as a member of our exclusive platform. As you may know, the Friendship Triangle is Twitch's only two-dimensional, triangle-shaped, friendship access and trickle-down cloud tiered reward system. Today you have an amazing opportunity to join the base level of the Friendship Triangle system. Once you are part of the community, you'll have the ability to rise through the ranks and achieve higher levels of access and rewards. One way to do this is by gifting subscriptions to your fellow members or by inviting your friends and family members to join our community. As you ascend the tiers, you will be exposed to a range of new and exciting benefits, such as exclusive content, advanced features, and access to our elite community members. We are confident that you will enjoy all the perks that come with being part of the Friendship Triangle. However, we also want to remind you that not all friends and family members are to be trusted, especially those who may not support your new lifestyle. That's why we encourage you to focus on building meaningful relationships within our community, where you will find like-minded individuals who share your interests and values. If you have any questions or concerns, please don't hesitate to reach out to our team. We are always here to support our members and ensure that your experience with the Friendship Triangle is enjoyable. We're glad that you are considering joining the Friendship Triangle community. We look forward to seeing you rise through the Chaos Zone and all the way into the Elite tier. It's not a cult.
I play this video first thing in the morning. Good. That's how you're supposed to do it. That's how you're supposed to do it. Anyway, thanks again, Anon, and thanks again, Part Ian, for the gifted sub. Now a mere 22 subs away from the goal. Should be no problem. If anyone else does want to please subscribe to the channel, it really, really does help me out and allows me to
We simply
do this show.
use the computer to mark up the size of the account.
Two lies and a truth. We talk about investing in Raytheon and Lockheed Martin. We do work for the CIA and Radio Free Asia. We have almost daily discussions about gooning.
You can count on me. You're gonna have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
Lodane, thank you very much for a gifted sub. That's very nice of you, Lodane. Thank you. It's out of love of Hey Duke, don't get mushy. Okay. I got it just a moment too late. I was a little worried that it was a cult, but the ending convinced me. Good. Good. It's important that everyone understands that that's not what it's about. So again, folks, we're a mere 21 subs away from the goal. If you can, please do support this program and support the community. Help me make the little number go up. The little number at the bottom of the screen. This little number, this is the only way that I can do this. It's the only way. It's the only way you'll ever know. Bill Collins. It's the only way that I can keep doing the show, is if the little number goes up. This little fucking number. But a mere 21 subs to go should be no problem. Should be no problem. Next time you have to ask Hayat about Steely Dan. Yeah, I kind of forgot about that. I'm sure I'm reasonably confident in saying that Hayat is a fan of the Dan. You know, I'm actually like, tell me if I'm being crazy, chat. I've never gotten a tattoo in my life. I have 0 tattoos. I'm like one of the only people in my generation that's completely unmarked. I've been thinking lately about getting that, because, you know, people get Che Guevara tattoos and it's always the same face. It's like the same like Che face. But we always watch that speech, that Che Guevara speech. You know, never trust the imperialists. Not even for a moment. Ni tantico, right? And I've been considering, because I have like a scar on my arm that kind of bugs me and I don't like it and I kind of want to cover it up. I was kind of considering getting
You can count on me. You're
getting a
good
Che
old
tattoo
Rob to talk you through all this.
Che's speech at the UN when he's talking about that. When he's talking about never trusting the imperialists. That says, Ni tantico. Do you think it would be lame if I did that? Could I do that? Could I get away with that? A yellow Parenti would be cool too. That would be very cool. Anon, thank you for another gifted sub. Thank you, Anon. I appreciate it. We're only 70% of the way through this hype train, folks. Another 2 gifted subs, it would get to the next level of this hype train. Another 2. That's nothing. That's barely anything. Anyway, I'm considering it. I'm considering getting a Che Guevara tattoo that says Ni Tantico on it, but like, I probably won't, to be fair. I probably won't. I'll probably chicken out. But I've been thinking about it. I've been thinking about it for the first time in my life. Once you get one, you haven't get more. Could I do that in my 40s? Becoming a tattoo guy? I don't think I'm going to become a tattoo guy. I really don't. I'm just thinking about this one. Right next to your tattoo of Prince Charles, obviously. Two legends that you always hear in the same sentence, Che Guevara and Prince Charles. R.I.P. to your king. He didn't actually die yet, did he? They're only preparing for him to die. He didn't die today, though, right? No. He's in rough shape. It's so like he's in bad shape. It's like it's so delicious. The idea that he waited so long for his fucking mother to kick the bucket so he could be king. And then he gets to be king for like less than a year. That's just beautiful. There's something beautiful about that. Now that I'm over 40, I have a list of tattoos I'd consider getting, but I do worry that I'll make my medical care worse because nurses are all mean girls and they'll treat me worse if I have ink near where they attempt to give me an IV or draw blood. And that's a totally legitimate fear, I think. Yeah, I don't know. I was just kind of stream of consciousness. I don't know if I'm going to get a tattoo, but I've definitely thought about it more lately than I probably did for the rest of my life. We know you're not a mean girl, Lioness. That's why you're the official medical correspondent of this program. That's exactly why. Because you don't have that attitude. And that's right. If people in the community or the chat have any like medical issues, Mistress of Insanity has very graciously volunteered to give official medical advice for anything, whatever you might be dealing with. Which is that's just really commendable, I think. Very selfless. Yeah, send her a picture, whatever the issue is. Whatever the issue is. Legally binding agreement. That's right. That's absolutely correct. I got medical issues for days, and me too. I know the feeling. She's actually into the whole gross wound pick thing. Between Mistress and bothering Hakeem as a tier 3D program, who needs healthcare? Exactly. It's overrated. I have stomach aches every day after I eat my dinner. 3 Big Macs and 2 liters of Dr. Pepper. Can you help? I don't know, because that sounds fine to me. That sounds like you have a solid diet. You got bread. You got some vegetables on there. Lettuce, onion, pickles. There's Dr. Pepper's like 99% water. So it seems, I don't think that's the issue. It's got to be something unrelated. I got a rash so bad on my ass, but you know me, I can't complain. I got a rash, man. Love DP. Okay, that's interesting. Anyway, me too. Me too. I'm a big fan. Exactly. You don't need healthcare anymore. Now we have MAID. We have MAID here. We have MAID. So now you don't even need a doctor. You don't even need a doctor anymore. Just wait till they have the booths. They got the MAID booths. Just on the street. If you're just ever feeling down, you can just pop in there for a couple minutes. The main reason I don't go to see medical professionals because my insurance is such dog shit. I end up paying pretty much for the whole thing. That's the thing. Like, there's our public healthcare system in Canada is like deteriorating. There still are public clinics, even if like it's becoming harder and harder and longer wait times and harder to make appointments or whatever. I'm just like, I'm so fucked mentally when it comes to going to the doctor. Like, I got so many medical issues I got to deal with, and I just have not been doing it. It's so stupid. It's so stupid. Well, I think I'll probably have to get going soon, folks. It's 3:30. I'm going to stick around for about another 15 minutes. Have you tried being born wealthy? That's really the best advice. If you want a home, medical care, a future. Yeah, so I guess I'll stick around for about another 15 minutes. I'm getting a little sleepy. I'm going to go pick up my kid from school soon. We're going to have a fun evening. Says I don't think our phones have yet the capacity to zap us to death. Not yet, anyways. Not yet. Pizza Hut and heartburn night. I should probably pick up some more heartburn medication before I eat my Pizza Hut. That's it goes hand in hand now. I just got off a mandatory training on my day off. That doesn't sound like very much of a day off to me. I just settled on some copay medical debt, like $800 after insurance stitches that took 10 minutes. Should have just glued it. God, that's so depressing. I'm so sorry. That's awful. Press here for healthcare. We're gonna start getting like we're gonna get TELUS and Loblaws to start doing it now. Let's start doing that. Excuse me. The Shoppers Drug Mart surgical department. We're going back to like the Wild West when it was like dentists that did surgery. You like stop by the dentist. They're like, oh, can you like close up this gaping wound, please? And they were like, sure. And here's some cocaine and heroin as well. We're going back to that. We should do that second part. We should legalize the second part. Yeah, barbers. Thank you. Barber surgeons. Excuse me. Well, we got to bring those back. We should give people cocaine and opium for over the counter. I actually agree with that. I do think we should do that. Haircut and an inguinal hernia surgery, please. Starting to see why at 42 people abuse stimulants to remain even remotely effective. Absolutely. I would like to get more into abusing some stimulants. Okay. Oh. Okay.
We simply use the computer to mark up the size of the account.
I said a little bit off the top.
Got a cough? Here's some heroin. It was a simpler time. Yes, it was. Thank you, Joe, for the 200 bits. And as our friend Kijiji Genie is pointing out, we're a mere, measly, minor 20 subs to go. Can you believe that there's so few to get to the goal? I know. Me neither. I can't believe it either. But it's true. It's within grasp. It's within reach. Only 20 measly subs to go to get to the goal. And look how tired this guy is. Look how tired. I'm yawning up a storm here. I gotta get going. I got the EPs. Chad, you expect me to sit here and keep streaming when I've got the EPs like this? Really? I crashed like so hard last night. I was trying to watch basketball and got to that point where your body's going to like shutdown mode while trying to watch it. And I kind of just like fell asleep on my sofa for a bit and then somehow like had one of those moments where like you're like get up and you're like trying to make your way to like the bed area and it's like so difficult. And I eventually made it over and crashed so hard. And then I fucking get woken up so much. I woke up and like my kid just appears in my bed in the night, takes the blankets away. So I wake up, I'm like shivering with no blankets and his feet like going over like my head and my body, just like turns fully horizontal. Takes my blanket and then goes fully horizontal and puts his feet like all over my body. And it's just like, Jesus Christ. And today I was trying to talk to him. I was like, are you going to be doing this like forever? Like, surely you can't sleep in my bed like all the time, you know? Are you going to be doing this when you're 16 years old? And he was like, yes. He said, yes, I am. I was like, oh man. You can't do that forever, right? You can't continue doing that forever. That's literally how I woke up at like 6 a.m. just shivering with no blanket and some feet like directly in my face. And it's like I still do that to my dad. I'm 36 years old. I'm trying to like direct him, right? And like try to get him to sleep in his bed more often. But that's the thing. I go to sleep and I just wake up and he's there. I just wake up and he's in there. I will be sleeping horizontally in your bed forever, Father. Anyway, I wouldn't have it any other way. I love the guy. I just wished he would just sleep in his own bed. You know, he just wake up in the morning. Like a human being in his own bed that he has all to himself. Maybe one day. You took the steering wheel in my car bed. Exactly. Get more blankets and keep them by your side of the bed so you can grab and go back to bed. I like my blanket though. I like my blanket. It's cool. I've been sitting in this chair for too long. Wob needs his bwanky. I don't know if that was necessary. But folks, I gotta get going. Do I have to stand in the corner until we get closer to the sub goal? Is that what I have to do? Is that what you're telling me? Chat, is that what you're telling me? I didn't want to have to go to these lengths. I didn't want to have to take these measures. Okay? I thought it was a fairly standard exchange, you know? I give you the content. Had a fantastic conversation with Hayat before. All kinds of interesting discussion. And in return, I get subs. You know? I thought that was pretty straightforward, but now you're telling me I gotta resort to these measures. You're telling me I've got to resort to these measures now. Very interesting. Well, I didn't want to have to do this, chat. I didn't want to have to do this. Okay, you did this. This is on you.
You can count on me. You're gonna have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
Thank you, Weenus, for the gifted sub. Thank you.
You can count on me. You're gonna have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
We simply use the computer to mark up the size of the account.
The Goon Witch Project.
You can count on me. You're gonna have good old Rob to talk you through all this. You can count on me. You're gonna have good old Rob to talk you through all this. You can count on me. You're gonna have good old Rob to talk you through all this. You can count on me. You're gonna have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
We simply use the computer to mark up the size of the account.
Nobody puts Rob in a corner.
Dr. Maggot, thank you for the gifted sub. I appreciate it. I did have a little chuckle at the Good and Witch project. It's true. Thank you, Saint Lotus, for the 300 bits. Thanks, Top Scruffy, for the gifted sub. Thank you, Anon, for the 2 gifted subs. And thank you, Joe, as well, for the 200 bits. Thank you. Thank you for that. What a silly program this is. Sean, you fucked it up. You fucked it up. It's never been more over. It's never been more over. You gotta stop standing in the corner. I don't know. It's kind of fun though. Kind of fun. I was reading all my book spines. Okay. Well, I like how the dude is so chill and really only Walter can make him hysterically angry. And it's true. Yeah, he's never phased. It do be like that, don't it?
You can count on me. You're gonna have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
Adnan, thank you for another gifted sub. Very kind. And now only 14 to go, so should be no problem. Should be no problem for those 14 subs to make their way in. Christ-like Anon gifter. So thanks again, folks. Thanks for tuning in. Please subscribe 14 more times if you can in the next 1 minute. In the next 1 minute, if you can please subscribe 14 more times, that would be great. If you could just go ahead and subscribe 14 more times, that'd be great. Okay. Thank you, Mistress of Insanity. I'm glad you liked it. Thank you for tuning in today, too.
You can count on me. You're gonna have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
Anon, another Anon sub. Thank you, Anon. for another gifted sub. And only 13 more to go in the next 10 seconds. Should be no problem. Should be no problem. Those are going to come in any moment now. Any moment. Those are going to come flooding in.